Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1997 movie titled Batman and Robin. Now, Batman and Robin is a superhero action film that runs for 2 hours and 25 minutes long. It is directed by Joel Schumacher. It is produced by Peter McGregor Scott. The script was written by Akiva Goldsman. It is, of course, based off of the comic strips from the characters were based off of Bob Kane, and it's, of course, from the comics of the DC world. The score was done by Elliot Goldenthal, the cinematography by Stephen Goldblatt, the um, the editing was done by Dennis Verkler and Mark Stevens, and the stars of the movie are Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, Uma Thurman, Alicia Silverstone, Robert Jeep Swenson, Michael Gough, and Pat Hingle. And what can I say about this movie except for wow? This movie is absolutely incredible. The acting, the settings, the costumes, the directions, and the script all fit into place in such an immaculate fashion. Arnold Schwarzenegger was just absolutely perfect as Mr. Freeze, and George Clooney really captured the spirit of the Dark Knight like no other performer. And Uma Thurman and Alicia Silverstone, they excelled very nicely in the female leads. So, therefore, there is absolutely nothing negative I have to say about this movie except what the hell did I just see? If anyone who who bit into my praises in the opening paragraph, I take complete pity to your souls. This is the worst piece of shit that I have ever seen in my lifetime. By way of contrast, if anyone who didn't fall into my web of hypocrisy, then the more power to you. This is one of the worst movies that has been ever made, and Joel Schumacher, I will never forgive you for it. Only Jonah Hex was worse, and that is not saying much. So, when those are wondering why this movie sucks monkey balls so much, is because of the hacks behind this film and the performers who sign on to star in this contrivance of a movie. I don't understand why this movie was even given to me as a birthday present. I'd rather have a hand grenade blown in my face instead. So when it first premiered in 1997, I was pissed off at Joel Schumacher from the first movie that he did called Batman Forever, where he took everything out from Tim Burton, where he pulled the rug from under Tim Burton's feet and changed the dark, gothic, believable atmosphere from the previous two Batman movies and turned it into a carnival funhouse filled with over the top circus freaks. And to change the dark and gritty tone that Burton made and to make it into a jovial, spontaneous, neon light inclined city filled with lovable, crazy, goofy freaks. And he also turned Batman into a more light-hearted, spontaneous thing, just taken out from the old 1960s Adam West thing to turn Batman into a light-hearted superhero. When he's actually a dark, angry, vengeful soul. He just turned everything around. Sure, Batman Forever was bad, but Batman and Robin was worse. Shame on you. Shame is all I could say. But however, after Batman and Robin, hey, you know what? I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy, and very seldom do I ever. And if you've ever listened to any of uh, my other reviews, I usually am a very calm, relaxed individual. But I just can't be calm and relaxed in this one. And I've seen all kinds of horrible movies, and I've never really exploded like this. And I've been doing this for 2 years. I'm not like this at all. I have to just let this out of my system in some way or another. I'm just not going to keep it bottled inside. I thought I just let it all out. But I can't, because this movie is an insult. It's an insult to the Batman franchise, and it's an insult to my intelligence. And I do not want my intelligence insulted. Capiche? But because I'm a nice guy and everyone deserves a second chance, I said, okay, maybe he's probably learned from his mistakes and will at least make a decent film, right? Not! I left the theater angry, just like all the other patrons who had wasted their money over garbage like this movie. It seems that the filmmakers have gave Batman a complete makeover by turning one of the most iconic superhero franchises into a laughable joke. It's pathetic and careless, and my ranting has not stopped. First of all, there is a lot of questions that need to be answered. What was the motive behind Mr. Freeze in his attempts to turn Gotham into an ice rink? Alright, first of all, his wife dies, and okay, I feel sad for Dr. Victor Freeze for his wife's death, and okay, it breaks my heart to some extent. But there was really no reason for his evil ways if we want to be invested into his character. Not the lame excuse simply because he can. He had some kind of a malfunctioning. He fell into a pool of ice or some kind of cryogenic substance that caused his body to adapt well to freezing temperatures. And if you try, and he loses his powers if he doesn't have uh, coldness within him. And why did Schumacher cast Arnold as Mr. Freeze to begin with? First of all, Dr. Victor Freeze was an intellectual professor at a university who spoke really good English, who had very articulation in his voice. Arnold Schwarzenegger could barely speak a word of English. His vocabulary is quite limited, and he was just very unconvincing to play the part of Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is supposed to be kind of a dark character whose obsession is turning the entire town of Gotham into a big giant skating rink. Not just some cockamamie, bad guy villain character who's got his mind set on turning Gotham into a skating rink, into an eternal winter wonderland. And just because of the fact that he's Mr. Freeze. And that he's got a name to live for. That's just a load of bullshit. There has to be a reason why he became the way he is. Not just because he's Mr. Freeze and he can do what he wants. Gotta give me a reason for his villainy. There's gotta be more of a backstory. Was Arnold just going through some kind of a phase where he didn't want to do any more hardcore action flicks? Yes, I know he kind of said that by the time you get to movies like The Last Action Hero, and then you had that god awful movie Junior where he didn't even do any kind of violent thing. Oh god, don't, if you've ever seen the movie Junior, my advice to you, don't. And then he was doing, like other lighthearted stuff like Jingle All the Way and the Sixth Day, which I actually did like, but still, it wasn't like hardcore action like he did in the '80s. I mean, this is, when you think of movies like Commando or the Terminator or Cobra or Red Sonja or Total Recall, that's the Arnold Schwarzenegger that I like to see. Not kid friendly, big, soft, lovable teddy bear Arnold. I want to see hardcore Arnold. And through all this time, and this Dr. Victor Fries did not always depend on just stupid one liners regarding hypothermia. I don't need to have him constantly saying things like, just chill, or freeze. Will you cut that out already? It's stupid. Also, George Clooney as Batman. What? Why? Did George Clooney made Batman into a joke? If you even think about it, Batman and Robin's costume was some of the worst costuming going. It came complete with bat nipples. Bat nipples! And instead of being this angry, vengeful vigilante, he was happy, he was jovial, he was spontaneous. And it looked like he was having a fun time, when really he should be out for anger, for revenge, to clean Gotham City from all these evil doers. Not thinking that it's just another day at the office, I could go back to my bat cave and read a Playboy magazine after. No. You got it all wrong. He's angry. He's vengeful. He wants to get even with some of these evil doers. Who's got their minds set on the same cliched bullshit all the time. First Gotham City, then the world. Batman is supposed to be vengeful and angry, not cheery and jovial. Oh, maybe I guess in Clooney's perspective, he thought that this film was stupid too and didn't really care about the movie either. And what was Poison Ivy's beef with Batman? Why bother asking any more questions? But the thing is Uma Thurman really overplayed her role. Now, I've seen Uma Thurman in great performances. She was excellent in Pulp Fiction. She was great in Kill Bill, and she could play the more restrained character. But here, she also over dramatizes and is just way too over the top for my likings. Chris O'Donnell, I was hoping that maybe he was gonna break out of Batman's shadow and evolve to Nightwing. And I would have loved to see that have happened. But no. I thought he was gonna probably grow up too and stop using adolescent type terms like, oh wow, chicks dig cars. Oh, come on, man. Get with it. And I was also appalled by by the other supporting characters. There was also, of course, the tertiary character of Bane. My God, what did they do to Bane? Bane isn't some big dumb servant to Poison Ivy. No, he's a person who works on his own. He is programmed to be both brutal and intelligent. And he was supposed to be like a formidable opponent to Batman. And then if you've ever read any of the Batman movie, any of the Batman comics, or seen some of the other series, Bane almost practically destroyed Batman. I mean, he actually physically tortured him instead of the other characters who usually use mental abilities to try to overcome the Dark Knight. But Bane was both physically and intellectually inclined. Not just some retarded servant to Poison Ivy whose limitation of speaking was stupid. And then you had Alicia Silverstone as Barbara Wilson as Batgirl. How stupid do you think we are? Everybody knows in the DC universe that Barbara is actually Barbara Gordon. She is the daughter of Commissioner Gordon, not Alfred's niece. Not Alfred's niece. If there was really any good performance, and I'm really sorry to say this, the only character here that really touched me was Michael Gough's character as Alfred Pennyworth. He was probably like the only character who I actually had a decent amount of sympathy. And yeah, okay, I admit I liked his side story as you know, after many years of being kind of like a parental figure to Batman, and then and then continued his roles throughout his life as a loyal servant to Batman. We realized that there is a touching side story about him suffering from some kind of illness, and that he's dying, even though he's very humble to tell anybody about it. So, you know, Batman and Robin and Batgirl are trying to find some kind of an antidote who could help revive and restore Alfred's health. And the only person who has the antidote is Mr. Freeze. But since Mr. Freeze is on a war path of destruction and evil and frozen popsicles, it's not going to be an easy ride now, is it? Oh, and I didn't know Batman's arsenal also consisted of ice skates and a hockey stick. Yes, there's a freaking skating scene that's going on in this movie. What kind of arsenal things does Batman doesn't have? Isn't like he pulls these things out of his asshole and it's like right there in front of him? Doesn't make sense now, does it? It's insulting. It's an abomination. Okay, listen now. I'm not exactly a cynical individual. I can get a little bit of humor in a superhero film. And it can make the dark dreariness seem less sentimental. And I can get that. But the jokes were childish and the puns happened quite frequently to make me sick to my stomach. And the straw that bit the camel's back was that this movie didn't make any sense at all. Freeze vows revenge on the city over the fate of his wife. What a crock. If he wants to unleash revenge, take it on the company and don't pin it on the city like everyone's to blame. Oh, and what's a nice way to get rid of all the ice once Batman and Robin end the rampage that Freeze went on by injecting solar beams to thaw out the ice. Hey, it sure is a nice day to get skin cancer, right? Uma Thurman transforms to Poison Ivy was also a major contrivance. We need some better scientific data as to why she became Poison Ivy. Oh, but Schumacher didn't want to complicate things to the younger audience. So she gets thrown into some pool of feces and mutates into an evil villain, complete with poisoned blood in her veins and a kiss of death and a wardrobe change for that matter. Okay, so Mr. Freeze wants to take on Batman. I can vouch for that. But what's Poison Ivy's gripe on Batman? Actually, that's the problem with what happened, like, after the first Batman, where the only main villain really was the Joker. By the time we get to, like, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin, the focus is basically giving Batman and the rest of the other protagonists more or less just an afterthought. I mean, Burton also made that kind of mistake too in Batman Returns by having three villains. I mean, we had Penguin, we had the on again, off again, uh, semi-hero but not quite villainous Catwoman, and of course, I guess if you want to throw Christopher Walken in as Max Schreck, he kind of comes across as a bit of a villain too. And then Batman Forever, we had the Riddler and Two-Face. And now here, once again, the emphasis seems to be mostly centered across the over-the-top villains, which were, in this case, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and Bane. In fact, the only character in this movie that gets destroyed is Bane. But the two main principal villains, which were Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze, they don't die. In the first Batman movie, Joker's gone. In the second Batman movie, Penguin's gone. And I guess maybe for that matter, Shrek. In the third one, Two-Face is gone. Riddler is institutionalized. But in this movie, neither Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy get killed. Why? So the kiddies won't scream when their favorite villains go down? That doesn't sit well. Every superhero movie, the villain should die. It doesn't have to be an over-the-top, gruesome thing, but it just works when a villain dies. It just didn't happen. Was Schumacher so much obsessed with trying to appease to the younger audiences they didn't want to see a villain go down by way of death? I mean, come on, it's a superhero movie. I mean, if it was a real thing, no, I don't think think anybody deserves to die, but this is a superhero movie. We need at least a character to die. Maybe in a kiddie movie, no. But this is a superhero action movie. The average age demographics people come to see are those who are in their 20s, maybe adolescence, but early 20s. Like I said, there is no reason for Poison Ivy to get into a feud with Batman. It's like me picking a fight with a bystander for the sake of walking in the other direction. That's kind of like the reason why Poison Ivy decided to vow revenge on Batman. Other than that, she's got no gripe. There was no motive. She just vowed revenge on him just for the sake of his presence. So when the dust finally clears, all I can say is that this is by far one of the worst movies in the 1990s. The acting was horrible, the action sequences were juvenile, and the spontaneous atmosphere and the scenery was way too bright and colorful enough to make me go blind. When will Schumacher and Akiva Goldsman realize that Batman is not played for farcical jokes and playful amusement park scenarios? Batman is a dark and brooding character, fending off against diabolical characters, and his tone is dark and gothic setting, not an overblown circus with wimpy heroes and idiotic, laughable villains. And I'm glad they did not do a fifth installment. After this debauchery, I'm glad that Warner Brothers decided to pull the plug of a fifth installment, and that it had to take many, many years to rebuild and reshape the Batman franchise. It took about 8 years for Christopher Nolan to revive the Batman legacy by creating the dark and dreary atmosphere filled with scumbags slithering a crime infested city. And Christian Bale, thank you for making us love and appreciate the Batman that was meant to be portrayed. Schumacher, you killed off a franchise, and for that, I will never forgive you for it. Do you hear me? Never! So I guess this kind of ends my rider review for today. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. And I promise you, I will do my best to be a lot more calmer in my next one. Thank you all for listening in. And until next time, this is Eric Kurot Ryder saying, keep watching those movies, and I will see you around. Goodbye.